right. Hello, and welcome to Politics in a Movie with your hosts, Doug and Mike. I'm Doug.
And I'm Mike.
Welcome. This week's episode, Watergate and Back to the Future 2. Hello, everyone. This is our first episode of our podcast. If you haven't figured it out, we cover two separate segments in our podcast. Mike will lead you on his merry review of a political topic, and then I will cover a movie that we pick. Mike, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I think you covered that well, Doug.
Thank you very much. And then, hey, a quick mention to our tech guy extraordinaire, Frenchie. He's making our tech magic happen in the background. We want to give him a quick call out and thank you. And he would chime in, but not only does he not understand a single thing I'm saying, but we have no budget to get him a microphone. But he is in the background, and we do thank him for his help.
Oh yeah, he's holding his thumb up. He's giving a thumbs up. Good job, Frenchie.
Yes. Thank you. All right, so why don't we jump into today's political topic, Mike? Watergate.
Sure, Watergate. I know a lot of our audience knows about Watergate. I mean, it's been around for a long time. It happened in the early 70s. And the funny thing, in talking about Watergate, a lot of people might not realize that the title came from the name of the real estate complex where some of the events happened. I mean, a lot of the kind of crimes happened after the events, but basically the offices of the Democratic Committee were in an office building called the Watergate. And it was more than an office building. It had apartments and it had a hotel. And in fact, back when I worked in Washington, somebody who worked in my office lived in an apartment at Watergate.
Yeah.
But
yeah, and it's interesting, Watergate, of course, is the word people use to define that specific scandal. But over the years, it's turned into a thing where people just throw the word "gate" at the end of all kinds of words to indicate a scandal.
Yes,
but do they know really what's past that? And they know who that it's a scandal about, basically affecting the president at the time. Like, how many people know that it was President? What's his full name?
Richard Milhous Nixon.
Yeah, that guy. Like, how many people know that guy is tied to Watergate?
Like Iran-Contra Gate.
Yeah.
Monica Lewinsky Gate.
Yeah.
It's just like, what do they do if there's an actual, scandal that has to do with water? What are they going to call it?
Yeah, what would they call it? Like if some, company, some corporation was, poisoning the water supply accidentally in some major city, they would have to call it something else.
Yeah.
Watergate 2.0.
Yeah. But anyway, for those who don't know, Watergate, it began because there was a break-in at this office building called Watergate, where it turned out that guys that were connected to President Nixon's re-election campaign broke into the offices of the Democratic National Committee at the Watergate building. And it blew up into a much bigger thing, and Nixon eventually resigned because it was revealed that he had more knowledge than he had suggested that he had, and he, was impeached. And I don't know if he was impeached, but he had to resign.
Right.
So, right. Were you ever down there when you had lived in D.C., Doug?
Yeah. I've seen the Watergate. It's a nice complex.
Yeah, I mean, along the river. Now there's shops and things down there. It's a place to go and, sit by the water there. And I don't know, there's probably delis and things like that. Yeah.
And some people might wonder, how we choose our topics and corresponding movie. And, there's a little bit of a certain movie might make us think about a topic. and you might think, well, why don't we talk about the movie All the President's Men, right?
Yeah.
That's pretty much up the alley of talking about Watergate.
I thought that would have been a great. I think we should definitely put that in the file for a future discussion.
Yeah.
I love that movie. I love the DC kind of scenery and everything.
Yeah.
It's just really a thriller movie, and it's just so, and it's historical. I just love that stuff.
Yeah. Well, when I talk about the film, I will tell you why we chose that film in regard to Watergate when we get there. So
sure.
Yes. That's a trick we podcasters use to keep you listening.
Yeah. Don't touch that dial. But and Watergate, it's interesting. There was a documentary that was on streaming, mostly focused on, I think, probably John Dean's book, and he was Nixon's attorney general, or he was on Nixon's staff, I think.
Right.
And he was his White House counsel, I should say. He was not the attorney general.
Mm.
But it just was fascinating. I grab every story that I can read about that, and I watch as much as I can. I just think it's just an amazing time. I mean, it's sad. It's just, and people make the comparisons between Watergate and what's happening now, and the investigations of our former president,
right.
and the corollaries.
Yeah.
I think it's it's fascinating. I think they fit.
Yeah, and the whole Watergate scandal really wouldn't have had the teeth that it had if they didn't uncover like tangible recordings.
Right.
That were just he couldn't escape. Like he couldn't lie his way out of these recordings.
Right.
Like hours of recordings.
Yeah.
Where he incriminated himself, and
he used foul language.
Yes, he did. He did use foul and anti-Semitic language, and
yeah,
and and before they had the recordings, like he was denying all this stuff up and down, and then they show the recordings. He's like, oh yeah, well,
right.
It's just crazy to me how like people will blatantly lie, like deny everything, and then when you show them the proof, like. At least Nixon had the decency back then to just say, you got me.
Yep.
The jig is up. But these days people are like, oh, that's a deep fake. Oh, that's not my voice.
I know. I think with Clinton sort of just toughing it out with his scandal with Monica Lewinsky, and the impeachments, they did not convict him. I think that set the precedent perhaps for Trump, who is going ahead and challenging. He challenged his impeachments. He also was not convicted.
Yeah. Like it just seems over time it just gets a little muddier. But you got to look back into the 70s and Watergate as looking back on it now, it was kind of like, I don't know, like a naive time maybe, or right,
Feels like it.
Yeah, I mean, it was just like it was a more honest time. Like even the crooks in the 70s.
Yeah.
Like if you show them the evidence, they're like, yeah, you got me. Yeah, all right.
Right.
Like even the crooks were more honest. So.
Today, you talked about the recording devices. Today, you can't say anything. Don't think that you'll ever get away with. You can't. I mean, they try and lie, but it's on tape. It's on camera. I just feel like it's a different time. And back then, maybe Nixon thought he could get away with it, but then.
Yeah, well, I guess he just thought, that those recordings were his.
Yeah.
Maybe he thought, well, if someone comes in here to get these recordings, I'll just I'll put my cigar on them and they'll burn up in a flash. Like maybe he thought there was like a real easy way to get rid of the evidence. I don't know.
Well, his famous quote was, if the president does it, it's not a crime.
Because people have got to know whether or not their president is a crook. Well, I'm not a crook.
All right. Well, thank you, Mike, for shedding some modicum of light on that topic. On to our movie segment. Back to the Future 2 came out in 1989, 4 years after the first one.
Wow.
Otherwise known to fans as BTTF2. And I don't think we're going to be able to give any spoilers here because the film's 34 years old. So if you're worried about spoilers, you definitely should watch this movie before listening to some random podcast. But Mike, it was a big, Back to the Future was a big hit back in, 85, right?
Yep.
And so it's interesting. It was a really big hit, but the guy who wrote and directed it, right? You know who wrote and directed it? Trivia.
Zemeckis.
That's right, Robert Zemeckis. So he wrote the thing, and he wrote it just to be like a standalone single movie.
Yeah.
He had no plans on it being, 3 parts. And in fact, that's why he did the ending. Do you remember the ending of the first Back to the Future?
No.
Marty McFly sort of changed the past slightly so that his dad was all of a sudden successful.
Oh.
So he wakes up at the end of the movie and he's like, holy heck, my dad and mom have this great life now and everything's better because I made slight changes in the past. And as he's sort of, basking in this moment, Doc Brown appears out of nowhere in the DeLorean time machine and startles Marty, and he's like, listen, you got to come with me. And Marty says, why? What's wrong? And, Doc's like, it's your kids. We got to do something about your kids. You got to come with me right away. You got to come with me back to the future. And that's the hanger, that's the end of the film, basically. And Zemeckis said he did that thinking it would be funny and kind of leave people thinking, oh my goodness, what could be the... But he completely didn't expect it to cause a sequel. And so when the first movie made so much money and he was almost forced to do a sequel, he was kicking himself because he's like, what the heck am I going to do? How the heck am I going to get myself out of this pickle? As a writer, you really don't want to be forced into this specific concept of the whole movie you're trying to write. Now it has to have his kids. You know what I mean?
Right.
So that was a bummer for him.
Oh, no. You and Jennifer both turn out fine. It's your kids, Marty. Something's got to be done about your kids.
But the first one made a lot of money. The second one made slightly more, I think. It made $332 million back in 1989.
Nice piece of change.
Yeah, $332 million. And you know how these days people are like, that much is this much in today's dollars.
Oh yeah.
Right. So I ran the numbers, and that's $824 million in today's dollars.
Wow.
So there you go. Frenchie, how much is 824 million US dollars? How much is that in your currency? I think Frenchie's currency used to be the franc, but now it's the euro, I think. So, all right, he doesn't know. He's gonna look it up. Interesting casting fact: in the first one, who was actually supposed to be Marty McFly, and actually they filmed a couple of weeks of filming with this guy.
That redheaded guy.
That's right. Yes, redheaded guy. Carrot Top. No, not Carrot Top. It was Eric
Stoltz. Yes, Eric Stoltz.
Yeah, so he was Marty McFly. He got cast as that dude, and
they actually filmed a little bit, right?
They it was weeks of filming, a month maybe, and after those weeks, the director said, this isn't working out. Eric Stoltz is too much of a serious actor.
Oh.
And then they had to just, they had to just get rid of all that footage, and then they pulled in Michael J. Fox. So the rest is history.
Well, interesting. Buddy Ebsen, Uncle Jed Clampett, was the original Tin Man of Wizard of Oz. Did you know that?
I did not know that.
He was. He was actually a looked like a good dancer, and he had to stop filming because he was allergic to the paint that they put on him to be the Tin Man, the metallic paint.
And so you're talking about the guy from Beverly Hillbillies?
Yeah, Uncle Jed.
Uncle Jed, gotcha.
He was the Tin Man.
Yeah, and he missed out on that rich opportunity because of an allergy.
Yeah.
All right, so Frenchie is letting me know that 824 million is 770 million in euros.
Oh, thanks, Frenchie.
Yes, so always good to know the proper currency conversions. Another interesting thing with the casting is Michael J. Fox, Marty McFly, he had a girlfriend in the first one.
Yes.
And she was in the very last scene also of the first one.
Yeah.
And then in the very first scene, they kind of reproduced that last scene from the first movie. And it wasn't that same actress anymore. It was Elizabeth Shue now.
Right.
Yeah, she stepped in as Jennifer Parker. And
she went on to have some success. I wonder what happened to the original.
Yeah,
Jennifer.
Apparently the original one wanted to do the movie, but I guess her mom was ill. So she had to bag out. There you go. Family is always getting in the way of career. Mike, you remember that. Yeah, and then so Robert Zemeckis, right? He had to now think of, BTTF2, how is he going to make that movie based on how the first one ended, right? Elizabeth Shue's asking, what the heck is going on? And Michael J. Fox says, you're in a time machine. She's like, oh my God, I get to see the future? And Doc Brown is, not too happy with this. He pulls out some device and puts her to sleep, right?
Oh.
Yeah, and Marty says, what the heck, Doc? What'd you do that for? And he says, she's learning too much about the future, and that can be detrimental, basically. And then he says, don't worry about her. She's not essential to my plan. And that's how the writer, that's how Zemeckis, freaking worked that out. He's like, well, how am I going to handle that? Now I got to have her tag along. So it's now Marty, Doc, and Jennifer. But right away, he has Doc knock her out with some, sleep-inducing device.
Roofie.
And he actually says the line, she's not essential.
Don't worry, she's not essential to my plan.
I just love Doc Brown, portrayed by, who's the actor?
Christopher Lloyd.
He portrays Doc Brown so wonderfully, fluctuating between, this genius inventor who's using logic, and then someone who's just has a youthful outlook and is giddy with the prospects of things throughout the film. He switches gears very wonderfully. There's a moment in the film where they're traveling back into the past again, and Marty says, oh man, it feels like I was just here yesterday. And Doc Brown says, you were, Marty, you were here yesterday. It's in such a excited, gleeful, childlike wonderment, and that, that's what makes these movies, in my opinion, just, awesome, because there's such wonderment to them, and, the actors really carry that across, Mike. The one great thing in BTTF2, Mike, that I love, when Doc and Marty get together in his house, he goes over and explains to Marty and us, the audience, how time travel works. He pulls out a blackboard and he sketches it out, and he's like, okay, at this moment in time, we went forward, and then this happened, and then we would go back into the past. And Marty says, well, okay, let's go fix it by going back into the future and stopping this. And he's like, no, if we go into the future of this timeline, we're stuck in that timeline, and he's powerful in that future. We have to go back and alter the, and to me, it's just genius how he goes through that whole explanation.
Right.
And, when I saw the movie originally, no film that had time travel in it ever took the time to sort of explain it to the audience in any real sense,
Yeah.
So I referred to why we chose this movie earlier, Mike.
Okay.
And so when they go into 1985, they pull out a newspaper that shows Biff when he first was like making his first million.
Right.
And so I froze the frame of that film, Mike, and I looked at the newspaper.
Yes.
And here's the Easter egg. The newspaper says in the corner, it says Nixon wins 5th term. like in a tiny space that you wouldn't even really necessarily notice when you're watching the movie, you know. And then it says Nixon says Vietnam War will end in 1985. So not only do they have, you know, Nixon still in power because apparently, you know, the concept was he had so much power that he was able to rewrite the Constitution to allow unlimited terms, right?
Yep. And
stay in power. But because of him, the Vietnam War dragged out another 20 years or whatever, or 15 years. And that's in the newspaper when you freeze it.
Yeah.
It's interesting when you think about how technology was represented back in Back to the Future 2.
Oh, right. Newspapers.
One of the things that I thought was kind of fun is when he goes into his house, like Marty McFly in 2015, and his son walks into the living room, and it's like a huge screen TV that he splits into 6 different channels.
Yeah.
Yeah, he walks in there. He's like, "Hey, you know, put on channel 63, 105, you know, 22,
right,
13, and the Weather Channel." Like he actually says that. He actually says, "And the Weather Channel." And I'm thinking, who the hell is putting on the Weather Channel? What teenager is putting on 6 channels of fun stuff and then the Weather Channel? But I see that in the future, Mike, you know, because so many people are multitasking these days, right? Don't you see a future where like kids are just throwing up 6 streams of 6 different things and watching them all concurrently?
Yeah, well,
you know, I was in an airplane, and you know how they've got these movie screens on all the seat backs now.
Yeah.
And I was sitting there, and I wasn't using mine, but I was watching 4 other movies at the same time because of people in front of me and to my side, you know? And some of them had closed captioning on, so I was able to actually follow along. But I literally was watching 4 separate channels, and
on an airplane.
On an airplane, and I thought, oh, this, you know, this can be done. You can multitask and
Yeah, I don't think there'll be a Back to the Future 4, unfortunately.
Yes, that is unfortunate, but you're correct. Yeah, they sort of tied it off. He meant to tie it off after the first one.
Yeah.
Successfully did it after the third one. All right, well, we're going to tie this episode off, Mike.
Okay.
For all of us here at Politics in a Movie, thank you for listening. And you can check out our website at politicsinAmovie.com. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Doug.
Thank you, Frenchie. He's given the okay symbol.
Yeah.
All right. Have a good day.
All right.
I hold that.
Oh, this is heavy, Doug. I mean, it's like I was just here yesterday.
You were here yesterday, Marty. You were. Amazing, isn't it?